If you are using a $5 million solution to solve a $50,000 trouble, you are not rich, you are on the path to bankruptcy. Look at the US Navy. They own a $40 billion fleet, but are being paralyzed by cheap motorboats at the critical Strait of Hormuz. This is the shock of a billion-dollar mismatch. Technology is supposed to provide security, but here it creates a massive target for low-cost enemies. The biggest mistake smart people make is bringing a laser scalpel to a knife fight. One side is high-tech, the other is dirt cheap and dangerous. Today, we discuss why the Pentagon's most advanced technology is losing to primitive tactics. This lesson will change how you view resources and pressure. The US Navy faces a deadly economic puzzle: how to protect a billion-dollar asset against attacks that cost less than an old used motorcycle. At GeoGrid Intel, we do not celebrate weapons, we calculate their effectiveness. At Hormuz, we are witnessing the total collapse of a modern military doctrine. Military math never lies. When the cost of defense outweighs the cost of attack by a factor of thousands, the empire begins to bleed out. In military mathematics, the playable space determines the effectiveness of your gear. Hormuz is a geographic trap designed to kill giant ships. The strait is 21 miles wide, but the actual path for large ships is just 6 miles. You are sailing through a narrow corridor of fire. A destroyer's radar can see 300 kilometers on the open ocean, but here the enemy hides behind a rock just 10 kilometers away. When space is choked, reaction time drops to nothing. The very technology meant to give you an advantage becomes a burden of false signals. Reaction time falls below 2 minutes. In this environment, even the most sensitive sensors struggle to distinguish a fishing boat from a suicide bomber. Do you recognize this pattern in life? We often fall into the trap of overcomplexity when facing pressure, choosing the most difficult tools available. Instead of doing the core work, we spend days finding a complex AI app or buying expensive gear, only to realize time has run out. To solve the shallow water problem, the US poured $40 billion into the Littoral Combat Ship project, intended to be a silver bullet. Instead of a symbol of power, the LCS became a mechanical nightmare. These ships suffered constant gearbox failures and massive corrosion issues. The cost per ship skyrocketed from $200 million to $600 million, yet they spent more time being towed than actually sailing. The Pentagon built a luxury sedan that had no way to defend itself against a swarm of hornets. It was a failure of over-engineering. This is the tragedy of over-engineering your life. You buy the 5-star gym membership and expensive supplements, then quit after just 1 week. You want to make videos, so you buy a $2,000 camera but never press record. You are building your own personal LCS disaster. The Pentagon actually knew this would happen 24 years ago during a massive simulation called Millennium Challenge 2002. They chose to ignore it. A retired Marine general led the Red Team, using small boats filled with explosives and motorcycle couriers to bypass all high-tech electronic surveillance. In just 10 minutes, 16 major US warships were sunk. The result was so devastating that the Pentagon had to reset the entire exercise. They ignored the warning because of technological arrogance. They preferred to believe in their expensive monuments of steel rather than the harsh reality. Look at the math. When you spend $2 million to kill a $20,000 target, you aren't winning. You are going broke. Finally, they had to call an old man they tried to throw away, the A-10 Warthog. It is slow, but that is its greatest strength. The A-10 carries a cannon the size of a car. It doesn't need million-dollar missiles to hit a speedboat. It uses shells that cost pennies. The cost to destroy a target dropped from $5 million to just $10,000. The economic equation of the battlefield was finally flipped. The A-10 won because it was fit for purpose and durable. It accepted the hits and kept fighting, protected by its titanium bathtub armor. The lesson is clear. The best solution is never the most expensive one, but the one that fits the context of the struggle. To survive in a volatile world, you don't need million-dollar tech. You need resource coordination and a mental titanium shield to handle the hits. We don't worship machines, we worship equations. Next time you face a problem, ask if you are sending a $40 billion ship to catch a rowboat. If you agree with this mindset, comment "calculate" below. Subscribe to GeoGrid Intel as we decode the next battlefield equation. See you next time. The global economy flows through this tiny needle's eye, proving that geography still dictates the fate of the most powerful nations on Earth. Asymmetry is the ultimate weapon of the underdog. It forces the giant to play a game where every move costs him more than his opponent. The U.S. Navy's struggle at Hormuz is a microcosm of a larger problem: the inability to adapt to cheap, lethal, and decentralized threats. Hormuz isn't the only trap. Global trade relies on these narrow passages, and the math of defending them is becoming increasingly impossible for traditional fleets. The era of the billion-dollar platform is being challenged by the era of the $1,000 swarm. Quantity has a quality of its own. When we look at the defense budget, we see a giant buying yesterday's solutions for tomorrow's problems. It is a slow-motion financial suicide. A single $5,000 mine can disable a ship that cost more than the GDP of a small country. That is the asymmetric reality. Every billion-dollar ship has a cheap Achilles heel. In Hormuz, those heels are exposed every single day by an observant and patient enemy. The psychological pressure on the crews is immense. They are surrounded by civilian traffic, unable to fire until it is far too late. The failure of the LCF wasn't just technical. It was a failure of imagination and a refusal to listen to the people on the front lines. Sometimes the most effective tools are the ones we already have. The A-10 proves that simplicity and durability are timeless virtues in combat. The Navy is finally learning. Projects like the Replicator Initiative aim to build thousands of cheap drones to flip the script on the enemy. The future of war is won in the factory and the server room, not just on the shipyard. Cost efficiency is the new superpower. One lucky hit from a cheap weapon can change the course of history. The U.S. is terrified of that one moment occurring in Hormuz. Everything comes back to this one circle on the map. It is the most dangerous piece of water on the planet for a carrier. Saturation is the nightmare scenario. No matter how good your missiles are, eventually you run out of them before the enemy runs out of boats. The side that can build the most good enough weapons will eventually outlast the side that builds a few perfect ones. Arrogance is the silent killer of empires. The belief that money and tech can overcome any obstacle is being dismantled in the Persian Gulf. The A-10 didn't just save the Navy money. It saved lives by providing a layer of defense that the high-tech ships simply couldn't offer. This is what we call functional resilience. It is built to take a hit and keep going, a concept lost in modern fragile designs. Your life is your own Strait of Hormuz. Don't overcomplicate your defenses. Build a resilient core and stick to the basics that actually work. Agility beats size in a narrow space. This is true for ships, and it is true for your career and your business ventures. When you find a tool that works perfectly for its purpose, you don't need to replace it with something more expensive just because it's new. 22 years later, the lesson of Van Riper remains unlearned by many in power. The math of the swarm is still the same. From a distance, they look invincible. But when you look at the ledger, you see the cracks in the foundation of this $40 billion mistake. Victory belongs to the one who can sustain the fight longer. High-cost systems are inherently unsustainable in a prolonged war of attrition. The drone revolution is just the latest chapter in the story of the swarm. It is a story about the democratization of lethality. National security is as much about the economy as it is about missiles. If you go bankrupt defending yourself, you have already lost. The contrast is startling. One represents the peak of human engineering. The other represents the simplicity that can bring it all down. Every X on this map is a multi-billion-dollar lesson. The question is, how many more X's will it take for the message to sink in? The Warthog is a reminder that being ugly but effective is better than being beautiful but broken every single time in the real world. The curve is heading in the wrong direction. We are spending more to get less, a trend that cannot continue if we want to survive. We need to build smarter, not just bigger. We need systems that are designed for the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. Human intuition and simple tools are still the core of warfare. Tech is only as good as the strategy behind it, and right now the strategy is failing. Value is found in utility, not in price tags. This is the fundamental truth that the Pentagon has forgotten, and Hormuz has remembered. The future fleet will look very different. It will be smaller, cheaper, and more numerous. It will be a swarm that fights a swarm. It's time to reset our thinking. We cannot afford $40 billion mistakes anymore. The stakes are too high and the margin for error is gone. Find your true north. In war and in life, focus on what is essential. Strip away the over-engineered layers until only the effectiveness remains. The equation is simple. The execution is hard. But if we don't master the math of Hormuz, we will be forced to pay its price. Help us grow this community of calculated thinkers. Join GeoGrid Intel today and help us decode the complex world of military logistics and strategy. Thank you for watching. Remember, Always calculate the cost before you enter the strait. This is GeoGrid Intel.